is up, guys, and welcome to this special World Cup preview episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me my two great co-hosts, Federico Perez and Ralph Hanna. And guys, we are decked in the Avi Roja because you know what that means. It is World Cup qualifier time. Yes, Paraguay will be playing two decisive World Cup qualifiers that could indeed give them a really big opportunity to qualify for the 2026 World Cup. They will be taking on Chile at home at the Defensores this Thursday, and then traveling all the way to Barranquilla to take on Colombia on Tuesday. We'll have everything to talk about here. The official squad just got announced about an hour ago before we recorded. So, right, perfect timing for Gustavo Alfaro, right at the depth, right before these games. And yeah, I'm excited, man. I'll be traveling to Paraguay today, actually, at the time of recording. I'll be there tomorrow. I'll be there for the game. So I'm definitely going to be feeling the vibe there. Fede, of course, over there in Paraguay already. I feel like after this weekend, we're all going to be thinking about the Avi Roja, and it's going to be a really big thing. And of course, for you, Ralph, as well, as the ones that are Paraguay fans abroad, those, come from the United States or anywhere around the world, they'll be expectant on what could be one of the biggest celebrations in Paraguay in quite some time. But I'm excited. We got to get going on that. And yeah, before we will talk about one other thing beforehand, but I got to introduce you both. Fede, you are decked in the Avi Roja kit. That is the 2011 Paraguay kit I see right there, the one that took them to the Copa America final. Really great choice. But yeah, man, how are you feeling now with the squad being announced that, these games are coming thick and fast and yeah, it's a golden opportunity for Paraguay.
Thankfully, it has gone by pretty fast, and we got the boys coming back to the town. We got the boys coming back home. The good players, the Albi Roja players. It's great to be back, Roberto. Great to see Ralph here again, like always, in Guarani Vision for another episode. And it is preview time, pretty much. We're so close to the games, especially that first match against Chile that will be played in Defensores de Chaco. Defensores de Chaco that is getting ready. No more official games over a week ago already. So they're getting the turf ready. They're getting everything ready for everything that's going to happen in just a couple of days. We got the list out. We know officially who the players that Alfaro has picked. So we got to discuss every little thing about this Albi Roja and obviously talk about what happened with Cerro Porteño. They had a fantastic game at home, just like we expected and just like we announced last episode around that they were going to do it. They got it. They got it done. And they're heading now to the group stage of the Libertadores, just as Olimpia Libertad.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Ralph, introducing you, we'll actually start this discussion with Cerro Porteño because, of course, the win itself was so big for Cerro Porteño, but also comes at the right time with the group stage of the Libertadores also happening this week, coming up over there in Conmebol. So we get to find out what Cerro's fate will be in the group stage and for the other teams as well, for Olimpia and for Libertad. So three representatives in the end for Paraguay, which I think was expected, when we made this whole kind of analysis that we hoped that Cerro Porteño could end up in that position, and they ended up doing it.
Yeah, that's right. This is almost like a bit of housekeeping before we talk about Albi Roca because everybody's like mood is shifting there over there in Paraguay to the national team, especially with the squad call up. But Cerro did a really important job on Wednesday because by winning that game against Melgar, or they just had to avoid defeat to go through, but they did win it. They receive over $3 million now guaranteed, so they get $1 million actually for getting to where they got to, and then another 3 million in the group stages. They'll win more money if they start winning matches there. And so that's all really important as they start to build and think about building a team or keep or maintaining a team. And then another important point, I guess, just to point out for Cerro is they've won all 4 games, right, in the Copa Libertadores. They did this in 2023. They won their first 5 games, so they also won their first group game, and then they didn't get out of the group. So what we're hoping for this time is that Cerro have not kind of worn themselves out because it is quite a long phase, right? They had that grueling trip to Venezuela, then they had the late trip to Arequipa, so they've already done a lot of traveling and a lot of football. So let's hope they can just manage to keep that going through, and let's see what happens in the draw, right? The draw is in Luque, and then we'll see what happens to Olimpia, Libertad, and Cerro in that group stage.
Absolutely. But let's talk about that game real quick against Melgar because at the end of the day, we do need to talk about Cerro with a really convincing win. And I think there were some kind of doubts after the first game that, 1-0 is always a really good result to have, especially away from home, but you don't want to be complacent. But, ultimately it started out very well for them, for Cerro Porteño. Sergio Araujo getting the first goal in the 12th minute. Melgar really tried to make it a close game. They got a penalty right at the end. Shortly after, Cecilio Dominguez again misses another penalty. It's kind of been bad form for him on the penalty kicks for him, but Melgar tried to make it a close game when they did they scored right right before halftime to make it 2-1 on aggregate. But Cerro just went full out in the second half. Carrizo, Chico da Costa, and Farinha getting the goals to end it 4-2 on the day and 5-2 on aggregate. So it was a convincing win. It was expected. And, I think Cerro Porteño have really tried to bounce back after what happened in the Super Clasico. They're trying to build that momentum. And now, yeah, it's going to be a big task to see what they do in the group stage when we figure out who they play. But ultimately, I think they needed this. They needed this win. They needed a convincing win as well. It wasn't one of those like ballsy 1-0 wins or doing it on penalties or anything like that. No, they got the convincing win. And I think, Ralph, that's something that for Cerro fans, they can feel very much. You can kind of, soften the wound of what really has been kind of a really inconsistent season so far for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think I think because the league form has been so indifferent, let's say, that everything was now riding on getting into the group stages and for Diego Martinez to start to prove that he can do something and he can almost argue, right, that, oh, I'm just using my best team for the Copa Libertadores, and that's maybe our league form will suffer, but you're going to see some fireworks in the continental tournament. And I mean, at halftime, it really didn't look like that might happen because of the Cecilio penalty miss, which I think we have to talk about because, players sometimes miss penalties. That's part of football. But Cecilio's now missed 3 out of 5 he's taken this year. And he was on 2 out of 4 right before that. There was really no reason he should have been taking the penalty because Pires Damota was on the pitch and he had scored the penalty against Melgar in the first leg. So I think that was a real big error from Diego Martinez in terms of he needs to say, I'm sorry, Celio, you might be one of my best players on the pitch, but when it comes to penalties, the numbers don't lie, right? I mean, this is one of those very easy statistics in football that just doesn't lie. So that was a mistake, and then it really looked like it was going to cost them because Martinez scores a penalty for Melgar at the other end just before halftime, and you thought, well, Melgar just need one goal, and they're going to take this to penalties. Ultimately, what Cerro did, I thought they did very well, and they set up for this was they knew Melgar had to score. They knew Melgar had to come out and attack, so they were able to play on counter-attack and not have much possession. Cerro ended the game with like 39% possession, but an XG of 2.8. And Melgar, with all their 60% possession, I think really their XG is just the penalty. I don't think they even reached 1. And the penalty itself is pretty much all of that. So, I mean, I think Cerro did manage the game very well outside of that penalty decision, which they really shouldn't have given to Cecilio Dominguez. And Dominguez did have his moments, right, on the field. If he sets up Da Costa for the third goal, and actually he had set up Da Costa like moments before, but he'd been just offside. So Cerro almost got the same goal just twice in 2 minutes. Just the first one was ruled offside, and you could see definitely those last 2 goals in the second half. I mean, Cerro were just hitting Melgar on the break. Melgar didn't have anything left, right? They had to go for it. And they were able to see off the game in quite convincing fashion. It's very different to the first game, right? The first game very, very tight, the 1-0. This game ends with 6 goals. And that's very typical, I think, you sometimes see in the Copa Libertadores knockouts, right? Where the second leg has to open up more because one of the teams is going to have to go out there and win a game. They can't afford not to. And so I thought Cerro managed that very well. And you looked at their list of players and the kind of players they started with or could bring on, and they have a good team to do that counter-attack setup. So you got Aguayo, you have Iturbe when he's fit. Da Costa is actually very interesting when he comes on as a sub. I don't think as a starter, but when he comes on as a sub, he's kind of very interesting because then you have that focal point to hold up the ball. And of course, Cecilio Dominguez has been playing well in patches. And talking about patches, Pachi Carrizo, we shouldn't forget about him. His goal that's the 3rd time in a row he scored at home against Peruvian opposition. So he has something he keeps doing that when the Peruvian teams show up. So those little sparks of quality, if they can get that all together, it's enough to maybe pull off some good results against teams in the Libertadores.
This is what I was expecting from Cerro Porteño. I mean, after what we saw from Melgar in that first game, I thought that it had a lot to do with Cerro Porteño being tired and the altitude also in that second half. So I thought, okay, Cerro at home, they're gonna feel better, but scoring 4 goals, that was a big surprise for me. Even the starting lineup, I mean, putting in there Sergio Araujo after what Francisco da Costa had gone through in that General Caballero game where he got that red card so early and left the team with just 10 players after not even 10 minutes in the game. That was the big doubt going forward in Libertadores. What are you gonna do? Because Jonathan Torres, the starting center forward, wasn't available. No, you had Iturbe out, so who was gonna play with Cecilio Dominguez, who has been probably his main target up there so far. He's been the important player in this team, the playmaker, and also probably the lead scorer. But you had expectations with Francisco Acosta and just how much game time he was going to have during this whole semester, and he has not taken his chances. So it was the opportunity for Sergio Araujo, and look at him. He opened the match up, and you got to give it to him, right? After probably not earning his salary these last couple of months, scoring that goal, he was going all out, celebrating it, and it was a fun one overall. I believe I thought Melgar was gonna be a harder task for Cerro Porteño, but they ended up going through just like expected. I don't think there's much of a build-up in this match, but the good thing is that I think the coach knows the players a lot better right now, and he has the opportunity to just try to build eventually a good team, which you don't see right now. I mean, you're seeing players that are winning their spot in defense, just like Matias Perez. Who would have thought at the beginning of the season that he was going to be starting there with Gustavo Velasquez, right? People thought that Diego Leon was going to come back and he was going to be the starting left back, and it has not gone that way. Guillermo Benitez has shown his stuff, especially in Libertadores games, and he won the spot over. So there's that thing going on in Cerro Porteño of who's going to end up in the starting jobs in every game, because he doesn't have a stable team as of right now. Talking about Diego Martinez and his job, but I think things are going to calm down now in Cerro Porteño, especially after what the current president said this week, that he's not gonna come back and try to be the president again in the next election. So all this talk around Cerro Porteño and every game and the protests that have been going on, maybe all that seizes down after what has been a really good result and really good money, just like Ralph said, right? From the financial point of it, it really works out for Cerro Porteño staying in Libertadores. We'll see which big team ends up going up against them in the group stage. We know there's going to be a couple of big teams in their group.
Yeah, totally. And to go back on Ralph's point, yeah, I think for Cecilio Dominguez, I think it is time for Diego Martinez to make a choice and maybe listen. You haven't shown it with your numbers. So yeah, I agree. I think he has to really look at a different side. But you take balls sometimes to take those type of choices. And so if he wants to continue to work on it, then all credit to him. As for Cedro as a whole, I don't know, Fede. You're shaking your head. What are you trying to say here? What are you trying
I'm not with you guys on this one, because I think if you're Diego Martinez, if you're on that job, you got to stick with Cecilio Dominguez. I know I said it last weekend that you had to take it away from him. They did take a couple away from him, but he still wants the ball. He still wants to be important in this team. So on the important penalties, if he wants them, I think he's the number one candidate. And some coaches work that way. They're just not going to take it away from their star players. If it was just another player out there, they would probably do it. But he's a star in this team. Cecilio's very important.
What do you think, Ralph?
I'm worried that we're going to have another situation like Claudio Aquino misses a penalty against Olimpia in the Copa Libertadores, and it ends up costing, it doesn't cost them as much, but it ends up really changing the mood of the fans and the stadium, the team. But let's see what happens.
Nobody scores all penalties, Ralph. Even the best players at least miss a couple in their careers. I think Alex Silva is the one that has the best overall penalty rating in Paraguayan football. I think he's only missed 2 out of all the ones that he's kicked with the special style that he has. But They all miss a couple. Come on, don't be like.
Yeah, nobody's perfect, but again, like first if you don't succeed, try and try again. And Ciso missed it, and so going into the Paraguay connection. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Diego Martinez does with this Cedro side and what he does with these decisions. And just like you said, Fed, it's sort of a club that's really trying to get a new identity. And thankfully, this kind of qualification to the group stage comes at a right time, so they can now think afresh, think of a new sort of have a good and different mentality and see what happens there. Because obviously the draw happens on Tuesday. We have to see where they fall into place. Same for Olimpia and Libertad, because I think all those three teams, when we go back and discuss the groups in a couple of weeks, we need to figure out what their sort of state of play is. And so it's gonna be interesting. I'm really looking forward to that. And what I'm also looking forward to now is these Paraguay games, because now we are straight into Abi Roja mode. We have got to talk about the Paraguay games coming up against Chile and Colombia, because this is it, guys. This is the game where these are the games where Paraguay could indeed be much more closer to their first World Cups in 16 years, because at the time of recording, Paraguay is in sixth place with 17 points. They are in the final direct spot to qualify for the World Cup. Only Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Uruguay, and Argentina are below them. There is a gap of a couple points from all of those anyway. Below them is Bolivia with 13, who are in that Interconfederation playoff. And right below them is Venezuela with 12 points in eighth place, the eliminated spots. But we have to talk about the squads real quick before we go into these games, because now we have the call ups right here, and I think we're gonna go into order in this one. We'll go with the goalkeepers. 4 goalkeepers called up, guys. 4 from Gustavo Alfaro. Gatito Fernandez retains his spot even after a spotty season so far for Cerro Porteño. He's there. Carlos Coronel is there. Juan Espinola is there, and a new name that we've been talking about for quite some time, who has been doing really, really well at San Lorenzo, Orlando Gil. I mean, I got to be straightforward with both of you guys, because I think this was kind of the discussion that we've been kind of having, with one player doing well, one player not doing so well. I think regardless of everything that's been happening to Gatito, he's still the starter. I mean, Fede, I mean, just because maybe a little bit of a drop of form that he's had with Cerro Porteño, you still got to keep with him, especially after what he's been able to do in these 6 games under Alfaro.
Why? Why do you just got to keep him like that? I don't know. I never understand these things, especially after several months. If it was a game that was just played a week, 2 weeks ago, a month, like we were playing last year around, I would say, okay, yeah, stick with the same goalkeeper. But we're almost in the World Cup right now. I think we're in a really good spot. We're playing at home. The atmosphere is just gonna be perfect. Before the game, everybody's gonna be lovely. They're gonna be all in love with this team because we're in a really good spot right now. And I don't know. I don't know if he's gonna go all out in that spot because he hasn't done that yet. I do think he's gonna keep him. I was just messing around with this thing, but I think Gatito's gonna be the starting goalkeeper. But when you bring or you make a spot for a new player like Orlando Hill, it makes me doubt. It makes me think like, okay, what have you seen that can be special in this kid that has taken over in San Lorenzo? So I don't know if he wants just competition in there. I don't see the other ones really winning their spot yet over Gatito just because he's been giving all the confidence and the results have also gone his way. And in Cerro Porteño, he has done a really good job so far, even though he has a couple of mistakes along the way. He has overall maintained his status, I believe, even Ralph. I mean, he didn't play that much last year, but now we're seeing him, or at least I'm seeing him every weekend, and I see a very good goalkeeper and an international level goalkeeper.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you want to stick with Cecilio on penalties, you gotta stick with Gatito in goal, right? No, I think the Orlando Gil is very interesting, right? Because what Alfaro is doing is he's gonna start bringing him into the squad slowly because he knows this guy is what I think he's 24. He's very young. This is the potential to be the replacement that maybe we didn't see with Coronel, and I don't think Espinola has ever been more than a backup goalkeeper in his mind. So I think it's bringing him in, but also almost to learn from Gatito rather than to replace him at this stage. And to Fede's point, I agree. I think there's been one really bad error by Gatito in the I think it's the Recoleta game maybe, or I'm not remembering. And then the ones in the Clásico, come on, it might be that they're not really classed as errors, right? It's like, if you could save that, that's a really good save. But on the whole, he's been very good. I think even in the game against Melgar, I remember him making a very good save, either just before the penalty or just before the second goal. So I think he's fine. And the main thing Alfaro doesn't want to do here is rock the boat. Like, everybody's happy, everybody's winning. We're only going to make the changes where we really need to. And we're seeing that in the squad. So Gil is definitely, I think, coming in to be almost like mentored to eventually become a replacement, but definitely not for these two games.
I agree. I think just going into that, I feel like you make a good point, Ralph. You don't want to rock the boat. You really don't want to mess up kind of the mood just because of potential bad form at their club. There's some players out here that perhaps haven't been doing so well for their clubs, but they're still in. But that's due to a confidence that Alfaro has, and he said that from the get go. He always said that, and it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, it's a big point to do well for your club, but it's not the overall factor. There's more things to it, and so I think this is something that is vital, and then looking into the defense, like you said about changes, and I'll go to you on this one because looking at the defense, we have Fabián Balbuena, Omar Lerete, Junior Alonso, Gustavo Velasquez, Saúl Salcedo, Agustín Sandes, Juan Cáceres, and one new name to replace a name that is not there, Ronaldo de Jesus of Lanús. He played in the Olympic squad. He was in the Preolímpico team as well that won the championship in Venezuela last year. No Gustavo Gomez, because Gustavo Gomez has got a last-minute injury, so he will not play in these two games. And to be honest, it is a big loss, I think, for the sake of Paraguay, just because he's been so vital as obviously the captain and of course the defender. But you look at some of the alternatives, and I'm not here to say that Jesus will be the starter. I personally don't think so. I'm sure both of you don't feel the same way as well. But I think what we've seen from Alfaro is, when you get in names like Velasquez and Juan Cáceres, who perhaps are not the flashiest players and they're not those like gritty, they're not those defenders that you feel like can give you that sort of confidence from the get-go. But when they did perform in those matches, when they were given the opportunity, they shined. So this could be a potential where you look at someone like Ronaldo de Jesus, where maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't, but at least he's there as sort of that sort of understandable factor in defense that if indeed he is ready for that opportunity, he can shine.
Yeah, I think in a way it's a big loss, Gustavo Gomez, of course, because he came back as captain, and just as he came back, that horrible Copa America where he didn't play any games is out of the memory, and they're doing well. But then probably central defense is like Paraguay's best position in terms of depth and cover. So I'm not too worried. I mean, if it was a left back or a right back, we'd be much more concerned. So De Jesus coming in makes a lot of sense. Very similar mold of player, right? Very physical, good in the air. I think he was captain of the under-20s, if I remember correctly. So it's like similar leadership qualities. So it's very much a like for like. But again, a bit like Orlando Gil, it's not somebody to just come in and be a starter. It's to come in and fill the gap left. I do really think we'll see Balbuena and Alderete as our central defenders, or possibly Velasquez, because he's been playing there more now with Cerro, and they put Cáceres out on the right, at least in the game against Chile. I think against Colombia, you're going to end up seeing Velasquez on the right back. It's going to be a much more defensive side. But yeah, it's a loss, but I think it's one that Paraguay really can cover better than pretty much any other position on the pitch.
Yeah, I was just thinking, the last game around, I mean, it was Alderete, right, that had problems during the game and had to come out. So you never know what can happen, right? In these two games, they're very physical. It's top competition, so you might miss. And right now, there is a spot open in the defense, and you even thought, okay, is he going to call a new name? And yeah, he did with Ronaldo de Jesus, but he was already going to be there before Gustavo Gomez got injured, because Ronaldo de Jesus has really shown his stuff, even coming out of Cerro Porteño. He had very little minutes with Cerro most games last year around under the Spanish coach Jimenez. He usually came out in the second halves, and he would always score. I mean, he would always have his opportunities, just like Raf was saying. I mean, always getting a header in there. And then he made that leap to Lanús, and ever since he got the starting job, he's really been a top player for them. So this has totally caught the national team's coach's attention, and I think he's gonna earn that spot and know how to keep it, because he's a very he's total competition, and I kind of love those players, and I think physically he can really do something in international games, just like Omar Alderete does, right? I mean, he has been our best defender so far, and I do think he's going to be there alongside Balbuena, just like Ralph said, and then we might see in the second half who he puts in, because you have Saul Salcedo waiting for his opportunity. He's always being called up. Gustavo Velasquez is always ready for the job. And let's not forget about Junior Alonso, right? I do think he's going to put in the two big men back there with Fabian Balbuena and Alderete. But Junior Alonso is always a key player for Alfaro. You never know if he's going to put him as a left back or if he's going to use him as an option as a center back also.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see, and Fede, I'll go back to you. What do you feel is it that defense? You said Balbuena and Alderete, because you have a lot of players that could play in that center back position, not a lot of fullbacks, natural fullbacks as well. So are we seeing a case that we got Cáceres as that right back, or Velasquez and then Junior Alonso? Remember, we also got Sandes in that option as well. So there are a few options, but what do you feel would be the best defense to go for these games?
It's really hard to think about which one is the best. I think it all has to do with the certain matchups that you can have in these kind of games, right? I mean, I think it was so important when he put Juan Cáceres against Vinicius Jr. We saw what he did against him last year, and he's always picked the right matchups going forward. I don't want to say who's the right player to really stop, like just like you're asking, Luis Diaz, for instance, or Alexis Sanchez of Chile, who would always have problems with. But I do think this is something that Alfaro is going to take into consideration for the decision making. And for this first game, I think, looking at the last games and just how the players have played, I would put in right there Junior Alonso and Juan Cáceres on the other side, just because of what I've seen lately in these games. But I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, go ahead, Ralph. What are you saying on this one?
Yeah, I think in the home game, I would go with Cáceres, because if he can deal with Vinicius, he can deal with Alexis Sanchez, who's coming for his fifth World Cup qualifier in Paraguay. That's just a crazy stat. By the way, he's only ever lost once though, so like Fede was saying, we have had problems with Chile when they come to Asuncion in this kind of golden era, which I guess is coming to an end for them, but some of those players are still there. But I think Cáceres could do the job, because what you want is, at a home, you do need a little bit more going forward. That said, I don't know if I would see him play Cáceres and Sandes. It seems too much for Alfaro, knowing also that Diego Gomez is not going to be there, right? He's suspended, so that's part of your mobility as well in the middle. So I think maybe you'll get Junior Alonso on one side and Cáceres on the other side. I'm thinking it could end up that way.
Looking into the midfield, because this is where we're also going to be having some debate. The midfield that Gustavo Alfaro has called up. There is no Hugo Cuenca, but there is space for the likes of Andres Cubas, Matias Villasanti, Damian Bobadilla, Diego Gomez, Cacu Romero, and Matias Galarza. So looking at this lineup, and I think it should be a certain from the get go that we're going to see Andres Cubas play. I think Damian Bobadilla will probably make that start, but is that hole that Diego Gomez won't play? But I think, Ralph, after what I saw in the game against, even coming in for the suspended Cubas, I think the one that has impressed in that game, and I think has been doing so well for Talleres, it has to be Matias Galarza. I feel like I don't think there's no other name that for a really good midfield. I think Matias Galarza is your starter for me, at least.
Yeah, I think. Well, see, I would say Galarza, but I think he might play him over Bobadilla, because I think where the way he's used Bobadilla before has been to push a bit higher and maybe to make more progression into the final third, and that's what Galarza is very good at. Cubas for sure will have to start, assuming he's fit. He's been the best player in that holding position, but then I think he might play him alongside Villasanti. So we saw, because I think we saw Diego Gomez, Villasanti, Galarza in the last game in Bolivia, which is a different game because of altitude, all that kind of stuff. But I think we might see the Cubas, Villasanti, Galarza kind of middle, which is very, when you think about it, that makes you very kind of strong, right? That's a very strong midfield in terms of defensively. But if I was him, I think he'd go more for that than, say, the Cubas, Galarza, Bobadilla, because then you have in Galarza and Bobadilla, you have two players that do really want to be a bit further up the pitch, and that's that's not how Alfaro always likes to play, as we know. So I'm with you on Cubas and Galarza, but I think instead of Bobadilla, we might see Villasanti in that.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried. I talked about this on the last episode. Certain players not playing that much in their clubs, and Damian Bobadilla is one of them. I haven't seen much from him in Sao Paulo lately, so I don't know how much he's ready or how really he's ready for this first game. Hopefully he's gonna be that player that we've seen lately in the national team, that very intense player and that attacking player that he can be. Just like Rob said, when you put him in that midfield, it's because you want to have the ball, you want to have him putting the ball for the forwards and even trying to get to the box, right, and making his opportunities happen. Villasanti and Cubas are more players to fight it out there in the mud to try to get the ball back in the midfield, and they've really won their spot over. So with no Diego Gomez, it's really about if he's gonna go with Bobadilla, if he's going to go with Matias Galarza, who looks like in better shape as of right now, or if he's even going to take a gamble. Why not? Nobody thinks about him ever to start in this team, but Alejandro Gamarra, we're in a really good spot right now, guys. I think Alfaro has to take a gamble somewhere. I don't think he's going to go all out with three forwards, right? Even though he does love that. But, I mean, why not do something different in the midfield? We got to send a message out there from the start of this game against Chile, because I believe, our best chances out of the two games to win is definitely against La Roja at home. So maybe go all out from the start of this game and put somebody out there in the midfield that can really handle the ball, control the pace of the game, and that's only Alejandro Gamarra with no Diego Gomez in there. If you had Diego Gomez, you had all the solutions, you have everything available, but with no Diego Gomez, maybe you got to think about another way of playing in that midfield in this game.
Yeah, totally. And looking into the attackers, because we have a lot to work with as well, and 3 more spots to fill in to close it all out with the stars, the call-ups. We have, like you said, Miguel Miron in the squad as well, coming off him playing for Atlanta United. Ramon Sosa hasn't played in over a month as well. So you talk about another player, Fede, that has not been doing so well for his club. You got one right there with Ramon Sosa. Julio Enciso, there were some fears that he would have not made the squad due to injury. He is fit. He is perfectly fine. He will be there as well. Angel Romero makes a return from Corinthians. He's one of the new names that we'll mention. He's there. Alex Arce, Liga de Quito. Tony Sanabria, obviously been doing so well with his Paraguay teams. He's in there. Isidro Pita. And 2 new names. One that has never been called up before until now, and a new name that was initially there in the Alfaro era. Then he backed out a bit, and now he's back. Gabriel Avalos of Independiente, who was doing very well over there in Argentina, and Ruben Lescano, who just moved to Fluminense. He is there on the squad. I mean, Fede, there's a lot to go in here with, these. I mean, I have an idea of what I feel will be that front three just because of the names itself, but the good thing is to have that depth, but I think you need to go for Enciso, Tony Sanabria, and Almiron as that front three. The good news is those options that we have in attack, they're very useful. And that's a good thing to have when you have that depth and good enough depth that they can help you in these type of games, especially when, there's those fears of like players on yellows or suspensions coming up. You have that lineup, and I think Alfaro was really thinking about that.
Julio Enciso came back right on time, right, guys? I mean, from that injury, the opportunity to see him at least a couple of minutes, that must be huge for Gustavo Alfaro, right, for his decision making and his what he wants to do in this game, because Julio is a very important player for the attack of this team. Almiron has been his best attacking player, the most important player, I would even say, from the midfield going forward, because he does so many things in midfield. And I was just having this discussion with myself as I was talking with you guys. I mean, no Diego Gomez, and what are you going to do in that midfield? You could even drop back Miguel Almiron in the midfield and make room for another attacker with all these forwards that Gustavo Alfaro has really called up. It's a matter of how much do you want to win it at home. When you're going to look into that bench and you're going to see Alex Arce at a certain point, you're going to see Isidro Pita, you're going to see Gabriel Avalos. How many of them or which of them are you going to put in this game against Chile? That's what I want to see from Gustavo Alfaro. We've seen that he's thrown in most of these games, Angel Romero, because of the way that he fights for every ball. He pressures really well, but we got to win it at home. That's my way of thinking in this game. So we got to go all out, and I expect that if we can handle the game from the score, eventually we're going to go all out against Chile.
Yeah, I can imagine that too, right? That you see with his second half substitutions can often be that almost that gamble looking. And so I would start with the three that Roberto's just said, right? Sanabria for sure, even though again he's not playing much, but we've just talked about this already. I mean, that's not going to be the big deal here. Julian Cesar, assuming he comes through, like as we're recording, he's playing for Ipswich and he started, so assuming he comes through those minutes, okay. I'd put him in, and then Almiron, to Fede's point, is he's actually a great replacement for Diego Gomez because he can do some of that work of winning the ball high up. Then what you can do, of course, is you're able to, if Encisa doesn't have kind of the legs, then you're able to either bring on another big guy in Pita or Avalos, or you can say, okay, no, we're actually getting some joy is running at people. So then you've got Ramon Sosa on the bench. You got Angel Romero as well. So I mean, there is so much to work with. We should just mention, I guess, Ruben Lescano coming in. This is a really interesting thing because he was not in the squads when he played in Libertad, and we've talked about how Alfaro very often hasn't enjoyed players from the local league. As soon as he gets his move to Fluminense, I don't even know if he's played a game yet, maybe, but it's yeah, he hasn't even played yet. He's in the squad. In Alfaro's defense, it's true his back end of last year and the start of the Apertura, he has been really good. So maybe there's an argument there. But we know with Lescano for a long time, the quality has always been there. He's always been one of those players touted that he could have been a new Enciso in terms of going straight to Europe, or an Enzo Gonzalez. So the quality hasn't really changed. It's just maybe the fact that he's gone to a bigger club. I think Alfaro felt more confident to bring him into the fold. And Lescano is a very interesting player. Talking about Caco Romero, is that kind of the way he would prefer to see a player there? Because there's some similarities, but then what Lescano has is much more of that directness in terms of running at players as well, which Caco doesn't do as much. So maybe he's almost starting to find, this is the player that I wanted. I wanted to play with Caco, but I need people to cover more distance because we hardly ever have the ball. So maybe this is Lescano's gonna be my guy for that. So that late substitution, that could be him that we see come on.
It's going to be a huge task, I think, as a whole. But I think from the get-go, and we're going straight into the games now as we talk about Chile, you have to go on the attack, I think, Fede. Looking into this Chile squad right now, they are really doing poorly. They're really on their last, lives in this sake. It's they're, like I said, they're in ninth place with 9 points, 4 points from the Intercontinental playoff that's occupied by Bolivia. Venezuela's ahead of them, and 8 from Paraguay, who are in that final direct spot. So really, we are playing the game that not only secures our sake of trying to get into the World Cup, but we can kill off Chile's chances as well. And I think Chile are going to be very desperate. Looking at the record that we have against them in 10 games, 6 wins, 4 losses, 0 draws. Really good record, but we have been sort of spotty over the last couple of decades, I'd say. And they've been close games. They've been close games historically. And I have this really big feeling that as much as we have all this attack, and I'm gonna go to Rob actually on this one first. We have all this attack, and it's really good to see. But the way that Chile has been performing, they've been kind of I guess, a bogey team in a way. That they've been now with a lot of really old players like Arturo Vidal, Charles Aranguis, Eduardo Vargas, Alexis Sanchez. They have some good talents. I like Cepeda, the Colo Colo player. I think he's done very well. He scored in the game against Venezuela. I think he scored a brace in the game against Venezuela in the last game that they won in qualifiers. Um, so yeah, and Gareca has been good. I don't think he's ever lost a game against Paraguay as manager of Chile or Peru. So, he's also very much a familiar name in the bad sense. But I expect a close game. I just have this feeling, as much as we have all this attack, and we feel as if though we need to go to the defensores, and people are going to say we need to kill off this really, really disappointing Chile side. I think they're still going to go for it. They're really going to battle it out, but I think it's going to be a close one.
Yeah, I think a close one because that's just what we've been seeing under Alfaro, right? Of course, the home games so far have been much stronger opposition. But one thing with Chile is they've been awful away in this whole tournament. They've only scored once. I don't think they've won away. yet. They've conceded something like 14 in the away games. They got beaten 4-0 by Colombia, right, in one of their last last run outs. So this isn't the same Chile that we're just looking, as you said, the results that has beaten us in 3 of the last 4 qualifiers in Asunción. It's for sure it's not the same kind of team. We do know from Gareca that what he did very well with Peru was he played very well on the counter-attack or very direct without the ball. But now he's coming up against an Alfaro that's not going to give them the same space as previous managers had done. Even Berizzo, right? I remember the Berizzo game against Peru that I think ends 2-2. I mean, that was one of the early games, and after that, Berizzo actually started bringing his team much more further back and more defensively. So I do think you're right. I think it'll be quite a close game, but what we've seen so far is Chile haven't had the quality to score away from home. Paraguay have had the quality at home, especially under Garnero. Remember, we've won 4 out of 6 in these World Cup qualifiers so far. We've only lost once, and that wasn't when Alfaro was there. So, I mean, we're really the team that has made Defensores del Chaco a very difficult place to come to and to be able to get results. So I'm quite confident that Paraguay will win this game. I'm going to say it now. But like you say, I think it will be a close one. I just can't see from the way Alfaro is going to play and the way Chile will set up that you will have like a 3-0, 4-0 kind of game. It's going to be that 1-0, 2-1 that we saw in the Brazil and the Argentina games recently.
They're going to make it as hard as possible, obviously, for us not to score. I think that's going to be their number one mission coming to this game. They're going to know that the atmosphere is going to be totally for Paraguay, that we're on a really good run right now. And we're probably going to put, just like you're thinking, an attacking team eventually. Maybe not from the start of the game, but you're going to have to look to try to win at home. And I think Gareca has always been a good coach in that sense of reading what happens in these kind of games. But also Alfaro, right? Alfaro is a very tactical and strategy kind of coach. So I think that's going to be the key in this match. I mean, besides what kind of players can show up, I think the coaches are going to have to do are going to have a lot to do with the outcome of this game. And these last couple of matches against Chile have been special, have been tight. So I do predict another tight one against these two teams. I think Chile is going to try to come and defend in Defensores del Chaco. Paraguay is going to try to go all out, and hopefully they can get a score already in that first half, Roberto. If not, it's going to get harder and harder for this Paraguayan team.
Yeah, I think ideally is to get the win no matter what, just because of the circumstances that we play in. And yeah, we'll go into predictions afterwards, but I think you need this sort of someone has to step up again. Is it going to be Sanabria again? Is he going to do it again? Does he have to? I don't want to say he's carrying this team because not really isn't, but is it going to be him again? Is he going to be the hero, or is it going to come from one of our old virtues? You saw Alerete scored the Central Galicia goal against Argentina. Is it going to be someone like a piece of magic that we saw from Diego Gomez? Well, he's not playing, but something of that sort of thing, or are we going to stick with the way that we do, and you kind of have to depend on Sanabria to get those goals, Fede?
I do think Sanabria has been so important in these last couple of games, scoring especially. But the good thing, or at least the feeling that I get out of this team, is that anything can happen at any certain point. I mean, from set pieces, you just said Alderete, Balbuena, if they play, they can do something. Especially now that they've had several matches with under Alfaro, and they're getting better in that. And in that midfield, anybody can score, really. No, I don't think it has to be only Sanabria that people can expect a goal from. I do think that Enciso has eventually going to have to feel a bit more comfortable in that sense, finishing certain plays, being that cold-minded player that we haven't seen yet. That's what I want to see in these games. Now that everything is a bit better, you've had time to mature. You seem like a more mature player, Julio. Bring that to the national team, especially when you have that opportunity to score, when you have that one-on-one against the opposition goal. That's where I want to see the best Julio Enciso. That's where it matters, and that's where he's had certain problems.
Yeah, I think Ralph, we really have to see someone like Julio do it. It'd be nice, like we did against Bolivia. I think he can do it again.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going forward there are lots of options. I mean, Sanabria has been a focal point, but then you have so many players that can contribute in different ways, and even coming off the bench. And then let's not just forget the set pieces, right? I think we've always got that kind of Paraguayan mentality of being able to score from a corner or from a free kick into the box. Especially we were talking before about some of the bigger players that we think are going to start in defense. So the goals can come from all over. It is true that you got Enciso struggling and even Almiron. I don't think he scored. He hasn't scored yet since returning to Atlanta. He's got a few assists. But there may be both two players that really are thinking they want to contribute more with the final strike. But I'm not too concerned about that like I used to be when we used to watch Paraguay and be like, who is going to score the goals here?
Definitely. And now looking into the game against Colombia, because obviously this is also a team that historically we also have tight games. You know, the fact that they got their number, they got our number back in the return leg, the home game, the final Alfaro Garnedo game actually in the World Cup qualifiers. Looking at the away record in Barranquilla, 13 games, 6 wins, 4 losses, 3 draws, 13 goals scored, 11 conceded, and they have been tight games. You know, they've been really sort of one of those interesting matches and really tight ones as well. No, really a lot of blowovers. I'm sorry, blowouts or anything like that, Ralph. So obviously Colombia have been doing they have a really good team with a lot of great talent. Lester Lorenzo doing a really good job, but they've been spotty these last few games ever since winning the Copa America. Losing the Copa America final. They beat Argentina in that kind of revenge game in Barranquilla, and they beat Chile 4-0, but they drew Peru in Lima. They lost to Bolivia in El Alto, which we were able to get a point there. And then they didn't get a single point in the last window in November. They lost to Uruguay, and then Ecuador beat them 1-0 in Barranquilla. So plus they're going to be coming off a game against Brazil, which also is another team that are trying to rebuild form. So this might be a game that if Colombia are not in their best moment and Paraguay are coming off a high, that is beating Chile, they can snatch something. It could be a draw, it could be even a win, but I think Paraguay can feel motivated more so that they're also a team that beat them in the first game in the home game over there in Asuncion, their only loss in World Cup qualifying at home. I think they want to avenge that sort of game, and I don't see why Alfaro can one. Also, they need to get an away win. They haven't done that yet in this qualifying process, so this could be a chance that they can actually break that.
It's like you say, it's not the worst time to play this Colombia team coming off the fact they did finally lose in Barranquilla, and it was a game against Ecuador where you could almost imagine Paraguay set up the same. Ecuador scored really early, they get a man sent off, they play without the ball for most of the game, and they just frustrate Colombia, and I'm sure that's what would be Alfaro's perfect game plan if everything could go to plan. There's a lot of ifs though, right? I mean, there's what happens in Brazil, is what happens in Asuncion against Chile. Either way, this is going to be a totally different game to the one we see in Asuncion. That's for sure. I mean, just from the way Paraguay are going to play, from the kind of team Colombia is compared to Chile, it's going to be a totally different matchup. I think probably the biggest thing in Paraguay's favor will be Diego Gomez. I mean, as we're recording, I've kind of been looking up because he's playing against Man City and he's having a great game again. He's winning the ball. I think he's got like over 90% passing accuracy. I mean, Diego Gomez is such a good player right now. And so the fact that he's suspended for the Chile game, in a way, could work in Paraguay's favor because he's going to be so fresh for the Colombia game where he's going to be such an important player. I mean, even in the match that Colombia lost at home, James Rodriguez, I think, walked away with man of the match and was the best player. It was just pulling all the strings. They just couldn't find the equalizer against Ecuador. So, I mean, Diego Gomez is going to be so important there. And it is the kind of game you feel that Alfaro, he enjoys, right? He enjoys the challenge of having to set his team up to defend and make it very difficult for the side that really wants to go out and play and is flowing and is fun to watch. So definitely a clash of styles. In terms of prediction, it's going to be it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But I'll just remind everybody that Sanabria has already produced a game-winning goal in Barranquilla in his career, so anything is possible.
He had to do it. He had to leave it late though, Fede. That was the famous game against Colombia for the Russia World Cup. So maybe he goes back with something on a message again. And like Ralph said, it all depends on that Chile game. But ultimately, I think if all goes well, I'm not saying we're at the World Cup yet. We're very close, but I think if we can get something from Barranquilla, assuming we beat Chile, of course, I think that's where I'm gonna start to say, okay, we're going. That's my personal feeling.
I have yet to take the calculator out. I am not worried about the numbers that much. I don't know if you guys can do the numbers right now. I would love to know if with just two more wins. I don't think so, right? I think
Not
we still need
officially.
a
No,
couple.
even if we win these two games, we're not officially at the World Cup. No.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. But with two more wins, I mean, guys, we're right there, right? We're with the passport in the hand. We're going to the airport. I mean, we're right there for the next World Cup. So I think that's the message going forward with Alfaro and these players. That's why he took the trip and try to get in their heads in these last couple of weeks. Keep them motivated that the job is not done. It's about to get done. And for that to happen, we got to win these important games. And Chile is not going to make it easy for us. But if we get a win there, and if Colombia is not able to beat Brazil, we're going to come against Colombia in a better spot in the standings than them. So they're going to be under a lot of pressure for that second game. So I'm thinking about, the mentality of the each game and each team going forward. And Colombia's not having a good time right now, just like you said, Roberto, with a lot of stars, a lot of really good players playing in the best leagues in the world. But when they come together, they struggle. They have not been able to give their people a title. They had the opportunity in the Copa America and they fell short of that. And they're carrying that weight right now. And maybe Paraguay can use that to their favor. And if we win against Chile, I'm expecting another win against Colombia. I'm expecting for this team to build and build. I had my expectations with this team when it was in their worst. Why am I not gonna have it now that we're at our best probably? So I'm going for the best two results possible in these two upcoming games, Roberto. I don't know what we're even discussing this.
And no, of course, we're also going with sort of our reputation because we've all made our predictions, and we have all, at least at one point in the 6 games that Alfaro has played, have made right predictions. Fede, you've been good on accurate score lines, goal scorers. Ralph, you as well. I, of course, have got my share of good predictions. So we're also looking at sort of history of like, okay, if one of us is going to get it right, it's going to happen again. So now it's the big moment, guys. Now we're heading into predictions. This is the one. The game against Chile in Asuncion. Really, this is the game for me that I think that Paraguay can come off with a win. I think they'll feel more confident than ever before. They'll hit 20 points. I think the magic number to hit, assuming that the teams also below them do not pick up points, I think is 24, like, or 23, 24, one of those numbers. So with 20 points with that win, we need 4 points in our next 5 games. So that is something that I think would be more than motivational. However, I think in this game, I'm really expecting a physical game. Chile are going to really feel pressured. They know that they need to play sort of this final for them in the sake of their kind of World Cup chances. They feel like this is the game that if they don't get anything from there, I think they can kiss that dream goodbye officially. But I think, even after that, I think these are always going to be tough games. So as much as I want to see a really, really convincing win, I just don't. I think it's going to be one of those tight games. Might be one of those games where someone's going to step out. I'm going to say Sanabria again just because they want to continue that trend. I'm going to say 1-0. I'm going to say Paraguay's going to win 1-0. Sanabria goal. Another bicycle kick. Why not? Do it again. Do it again. I don't see that, but I think he's going to step up and I think he's going to be the winner. And yeah, like Fede said, the hero on the newspapers the following Friday. So that's my prediction. And yeah, I'm just already imagining what Paraguay will be like, the whole city, the whole country. The city of Asunción is going to be if they get this win and edge more closer to a World Cup. So we'll have to wait and see. Fede, what are you saying for that game? We'll both be in the stadium. What are you saying for this game?
We'll let Tony Sanabria know you want him to score on this game because you'll be at the
I'll tell him
stands.
I'll tell him when I see it.
And yeah, I'm going for a very tight one also, but I think a higher scorer. I would go for a 2-1 for Paraguay in this one. Two goals. Yeah, 2 goals from Paraguay, and Chile's gonna make it hard. 2-1. I'm
Who
gonna
do, who
stick
do
with
you who do
that.
you got scoring those 2 goals? What are you saying?
Oh, you want the whole bet? You want the whole
Yeah,
thing,
why
huh?
not? You've done it before. Why not do it again? Hell yeah,
I,
absolutely.
I I think we're gonna see a goal from Balbuena in a set piece maybe, and I do think maybe one of the subs might actually come through. I want to see a goal from Pita. I would love to see him scoring after doing so much of the hard work and the dirty work and not being able to score yet. He's actually kind of lost his spot because of what Sanabria has done in these last couple of matches. So maybe him coming in the game, it would be special for those kind of players also. But if I had to pick one of the starters, I would love to see Julio also have a fantastic game. Those are the kind of players that I'm going to be rooting for to score in this game.
Ralph?
I was also gonna say 2-1, so I'll stick with 2-1 because I can just see Vidal or Alexis or Vargas, one of the old hands, making it difficult for us. I'm gonna go with Alderete. We'll get one of the goals because I remember Paulo da Silva scoring against Chile before and a few times. So let's see another defender. It'd be like Perez said, Balbuena, I'll go Alderete. And then I don't know why I have this feeling about Angel Romero is going to come off the bench and do something. If anybody remembers, Oscar Romero scored a great goal against Chile the last time we beat them at home in 2016 or 2017. And so now it's time for Angel to do that because I think Angel has also scored against Gareca's teams as well with Peru.
Let's see those kind of twin factor. Of course, we're all going for wins, so we're on 20 points, and now heading into Barranquilla, which really, I think for me, I think that secures qualification, not officially, but from in my mind, I think they're going to go in it. I'm going to say that no, as of yet. I think Colombia will want to come back with sort of a fire in their stomach and really inside of them after not getting a single point in their last window. That being said, I think Alfaro is going to set up defensively just because of the way that's been going on. I would love it nothing more than to get a win, but I just think Colombia is just going to be really going for it, and we always have these tight games for them in these sort of matches. I don't know why, but I'm seeing a 1-1 draw. I think this is going to sound really brutal. I think Paraguay take the lead early on. It's probably from, I'll say, Diego Gomez. I think he scores, but then Colombia somehow get a goal back, and it's just sort of a they cancel each other out in that sense. So I'm gonna go for 1-1. Which, hey, listen, the fact that you haven't lost, and you get in a way, like you said, Ralph. You win your home games and you get points, either 1 or 3 away. You're going to the World Cup, so 4 points from this window. You're at 21. We have to wait and see what the other teams do, but that puts you in right there in pole position to qualify with 4 games to go after all these games in March. So I'm going for a 1-1 draw in this game. Fede, what do you say?
Well, I already said that Paraguay is going to win this one, so I'm going to stick with a win, obviously. But it is going to be just a 1-0. It's just going to be a 1-all. And I think we're going to hit him on the counter attack. And for those kind of plays, I see, maybe Miguel Almiron coming through in this game. Maybe a fast player like him can do something in a match like this one. I do think maybe Gatito Fernandez is going to be the MVP. We're going to need those kind of games because Colombia going to go all out no matter what happens against Brazil. And that's the kind of game that I expect. That's the kind of game that I'm imagining. Just a 1-0 win for Paraguay, and we're coming back with 6 points after this one, feeling so close to the World Cup.
That would be 23 points if Paraguay get those 2 wins, like Fede said. I said 21. Ralph, what are you saying?
I'm with you on this one, Roberto. I can't see them getting the win. Not like that famous win with Tacuara and Sanabria. So I feel it could be a 1-1 because I also can't see Colombia not scoring. Apart from I know the game against Ecuador we mentioned, but otherwise they've always scored. They've usually scored two. So I can see them scoring, but then I can see Diego Gomez having his effect being back, and I think Diego Gomez is going to get either a late equalizer or last gasp equalizer, and we'll take a point back, and then we'll be almost on our way to Mexico, USA, Canada.
Just the fact that you're saying that just makes all of us so excited and emotional. I can already just imagine what's going to be like, but we still have 4 games to play. But yeah, this is going to be a fun one. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to be there at the Defensor del Chaco Fede as well. And of course, Ralph watching from distance. This is going to be a really big game. And hopefully, by the time we come back, we will be more than closer than ever before to the World Cup. It's going to be exciting. I hope everyone enjoys those games. Obviously, fingers crossed that Paraguay get the results that they want. And yeah, as always, we will provide all the great coverage that we always get here on Guarani Vision. For myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hanna, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.